Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second breakout session of day 2. Great to see you all, though I can't see any of you, but I'm sure you're all there. Today we have a very interesting session for you guys. I'm Gabriela Palma Ho. We've had a couple of illnesses on the panel today, unfortunately, including our wonderful fearless leader and chair. And so I'm doubling today as chair and as a panelist. But between myself, Lawrence, and Chris, we have quite a wide range of expertise. And so we will have a great discussion today. So just to start off, to introduce myself, I'm Gabriela. I'm a senior consultant at the Social Value Portal as part of our advisory team. And my background is in corporate strategy, but specifically global impact development and ESG strategy development. So I am joined today by two other lovely members of our panel. We have Lawrence, who chairs the Brand Experience Group. BXG operates as a research and analytics platform that measures and benchmarks how brand narratives and reputations for societal and environmental impacts influence individual preference, choice, and market share. BXG quantifies the business case for investing in social value. So we will be talking quite a bit about that today. And then Chris is the founder and CEO at Serious Tissues, a toilet roll business that plants trees. He's also co-founder of Change Please and author of the book Obsolete: How Change Brands Are Changing the World. So today, what we're going to be talking about is quite a range, but ultimately the goal of this session is to help you guys as people who are passionate and interested in social value to help to build an internal business case for why do good things in the first place as a business. If you're here, you already have fully bought into that, but then also looking at it, at quantifying the link between doing the right thing in social value initiatives and commercial outcomes, and that is what Lawrence is going to be talking a bit about. Then I will speak just for a few minutes on using social value as the language to do that most effectively. And then Chris will touch a bit on his personal experience with his business and how he's brought some of that to life. So you'll get some real life examples. We are ready for the slides to come up. I will hand over to Lawrence. Please feel free to add any questions you have in the chat. We're going to keep the presentation somewhat brief so we can have as much discussion and as much time for questions as possible so you can really benefit from the expertise of the panel here today. Thank you, guys. And Lawrence, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you very much, Gabriela, and good afternoon all. Delighted to be here. The focus of this, as Gabriela says, is about making the business case for doing the right thing in terms of social impact, creating social value. Clearly, if one's going to do that, one has to be able to quantify the link between doing the right things and the impact of those things on behaviors and value and ultimately, social value broadly, both societal and environmental. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we do that. The heritage of BXG, Brand Experience Group, is in measuring how brands engage with individuals and how that leads to preference and choice and share and value creation. Just a small number of years ago, I led a piece of work with the World Economic Forum, a consumer and retail group there, on sustainability and how that can be embedded into business models in the sector. And the key issue we needed to solve was this issue. The solution to that issue has translated into what we do as Brand Experience Group in terms of measuring the way in which individuals engage with the narratives of brands around the things they do to impact the environment and impact society. So if we could have the first slide. And move on to the first slide of content, please. That's not, we're in the wrong, I think we might be in the wrong presentation.
Yes, so that will come afterwards. Lawrence, do you have the PDF version just in case?
I have the PDF version just in case. I can find that very quickly. You did. Andy does have it, I think. I mean, the first slide actually came up, but then we went somewhere else.
Yeah, sorry about that. Just some technical difficulties. It might be easiest, Lawrence, if you can pull those up on your side if possible.
I can. I have those in front of me now. Can I do a screen share?
Yes, amazing. Andy, if we could stop sharing on our side, and then Lawrence, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, let me know. I have it in front of me. I will click on share. Can that be seen?
Not. Oh, we're getting some thumbs up. I'm not seeing it on my side, but it seems.
So you should be seeing the just a cover slide that says quantifying the link between social value creation, individual choice, and brand commercial outcomes, unlocking value for money and value for mankind. That's really the theme of this. Can we see that?
We're getting some messages in the chat saying that we can't see the slides.
We can't see the slides. Okay. I can just try do another share. Hold on. Share. Okay. Let me see if I can do access your contacts allow. This is not. Maybe I don't know if am I authorized to do this?
I think so. Sorry, let's just check in the back with our technical team. Apologies, everyone.
Or can I, Gabriela, if I re-email the slides to you immediately, would that be a way around this?
Let's try that.
Okay, let's do that as well.
And Lawrence, if you just email them to the email that we have in the speaker chat as well, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I might need to just go double check. I'm just uploading the file currently into. Right, okay, what is the other email I should use?
It's just in the chat. It's Andy, ANDY, Rouse, ROUSE, at socialvalueportal.com.
ROWSE at
ROUSE.
ROUSE. Okay, that is on its way to both of you.
Okay, perfect. Lawrence, would you like to give a bit of an intro to the slides while we're pulling them up, just to the content?
Yes, I mean, just a little bit of background here. So, the Brand Experience Group has been working for more than 2 decades with brands, mainly with private sector brands, also with some public sector organizations, to measure the way in which individuals connect with brands across all channels. So whether that be in mass media or social or personal recommendation or in a physical location. But we've done that for many years. And we have we've done something like 5,000 projects with different brands around the world in over 100 markets in 40 plus languages. A few years back, I led a piece of work with the World Economic Forum to look at how businesses can create, consumer-facing businesses could create a positive link between doing the right thing and also making that translate into positive commercial outcomes. In effect, creating virtuous circles of brand engagement, growth and investment behind doing the right thing, that then engages further individuals that care, and then creates these positive cycles of engagement. So at the time, that I wrote a letter to the 24 members of my governing board, 24 of the largest retailers and consumer products companies in the world, to their CEOs, saying, ladies and gentlemen, we've done well. We really have translated the language from CSR to creating value sustainably, but we have a problem. And that problem was that we couldn't really measure positively that link. When I became chairman of the Brand Experience Group, we embarked on an initiative to build on that work with the World Economic Forum, because we realized we had a platform that could do that if we profiled individuals as not just consumers, but also as citizens, based on the causes they really care about and what motivates their choices and behaviors. We could actually make that link between a brand or business doing the right thing, people buying into that narrative that describes that, and then how that translates into choice. So we square the circle between engaging from a commercial point of view and engaging from a societal and an environmental point of view. So unlocking, as per the slide, which I'd hope we'd start with, unlocking value for money. Particularly from all the things you do to invest in doing the right thing, to engage with individuals. So unlocking value for money, but also unlocking them value for mankind. And actually, just while we're waiting for the slides, maybe I should stop trying to share.
Unfortunately, there's only one slide in the deck, so we might have to move on without slides, or if you send it to me in a PowerPoint format, maybe we can convert it.
That's interesting. I mean, I have the slides here. There's obviously something funny. I can send you the PowerPoint version, or I can just talk to this.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we use the PowerPoint version in the meantime?
All right. So I will send you the PowerPoint version now, and then why don't I just talk and we can pick up on the slides, as and when. So bear with me. I will just go back to the email, and I will send you also the PowerPoint version. Okay, PowerPoint version is on its way to both of you. But it's interesting. The PDF I see here has got all the slides in. Anyway, that's on its way. So let me just talk, and then if we want to come back, if we can dip into the slides, if that makes sense. So, as I was just talking a little bit about the history of this in terms of with the way we came to do this. Fundamentally, it's based on the way we profile individuals. We capture voice. We capture what's in individuals' heads, not their opinions. We capture what they actually remember. We capture how they behave, and we do that both from a marketing perspective in terms of what I understand this product to be about and why I like it and why I choose it. But also we capture that from the point of view of the causes, the issues that really matter to people, the narratives that brands have about the things they invest in, and we connect those things. And that allows us to both understand what motivates choice from a commercial point of view and brand values point of view, just in terms of functionality. But also it allows us to measure how people engage with the broader narrative that a brand has in terms of its impact on society, its impact on the environment. And we have 2 and a bit decades of doing that purely from a marketing point of view. Over the last few years, increasingly, all of our work has had a dimension of environmental and societal sustainability. And we are very enthusiastic about the whole social value concept, because one of the things that our data tells us very strongly is, first of all, individuals don't particularly engage with the UN SDGs. They're too broad, they're too strategic. They engage with things that are much more local, much more practical. They're about the local food bank, they're about the local education trust, they're about things that really matter to me and my community. What's also interesting is when you look at the narratives of some of the world's biggest consumer brands and retailers, and the things they talk about a lot of them talk things like net zero and all those sorts of things. Actually, what you find is that by and large, it isn't environmental factors that really influence individual choice. People are much more sensitive to the impact on their community, on their family. So when organizations talk about the great things they're doing from an environmental and climate point of view, actually, what we see in our data is when they translate that narrative into societal impacts and community impacts and very local impacts, actually the engagement is much, much stronger. So it's the whole social value concept is absolutely supported by the data that we have. Now, what's interesting is that when you look across our very large data sets across many, many countries, then what we see is that by and large, in almost every market in the world now, and this includes developing markets, not just developed markets, on the slide's got some examples, US, Europe, and China. But what you see is in every one of these markets, that more than 50% of people are either passionate, committed, or at least concerned about issues that would come under the umbrella of social value. And that's huge. Interestingly, I mean, it's often thought that actually this is a kind of very much a developed markets thing. It's Europe. It was the US. Maybe the US a bit less. We can talk about that. In reality, you find it even in big other markets where you wouldn't expect the impacts to be so big, often in many developing markets across Africa, because people are so impacted directly by climate environmental issues. In cities in China, so impacted by issues of environmental air quality, those sorts of things. In fact, the most skewed market in the world in terms of where we see the highest concentrations of people who are motivated by these things is actually Brazil. Issues of the rainforest and related issues actually mean that brands that can stand for the right thing authentically and communicate that effectively actually have huge opportunities in the Brazilian market. Just very quickly, because I'm sensitive of time, what we do see, and this is not necessarily a surprise, is that those that care most are better educated. Typically, they're typically younger, they have higher incomes. So often from a brand commercial focus point of view, actually that's kind of important, because it also says this is the future. These behaviors, these preferences are becoming embedded. And what we do see is that the impacts from a commercial point of view are often much larger than leadership teams in organizations understand. There's a couple of examples in the slides. One, the first example here talks about a brand where it's actually a UK retail brand, but we've divided we've segmented according to those people who are most motivated from environmental, social value issues, and those who are less. And what we see is we measure the market share impacts across those different groups. And we can therefore quantify the impact for this particular retail brand, by way of example, of the market share they are losing with those individuals that are most sensitive to engaging with authentic brand messaging around doing the right thing from a societal and an environmental impact point of view. So it's absolutely quantifiable, it's absolutely impactful, and very often those impacts are larger than people realize. We included one example in the deck, and I'm very happy for this deck to be made available to everybody. Of
Lauren,
three
sorry
of
to interrupt. I think we should be sharing the slides now, if everyone can see it.
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
I see some thumbs up. Yeah. Can you see them okay, Lawrence?
I can't see them at the moment because I tried to go to share something, so I'm not quite sure how I get out of what I'm in. But if you could go to a slide that, go to slide 7, because we were just touching on this, and then I'll just talk to the last couple of slides. I don't know if it's worth going back over the slides. As I said, I'm happy to share this with the wider group, or if in the Q&A any of it might be relevant, I'm very happy to go back to it. But if you could just look at slide 7, what it says there is even the individuals that care are less motivated by the UNS SDGs, I should say, SDGs, and net zero strategies than what matter to me, my family, my community. This is one of the reasons social value works so well in this context. This is very specific. It's very local. It's very much around the issues that are most important to me, my family, my community. The examples say UK, Italy, and Switzerland, just highlighting the fact that actually it's not the UN SDGs themselves that we're really focused on here. It's issues that are very much front of mind for individual citizens in these markets. And by and large, as you'll see, it's more about social impacts than it is about environment, although obviously climate has an impact on so many of these things. Just moving on to slide 8, and slide 8 has a title which is Misalignment to Brand Narratives with What Really Motivates Individual Choice can represent a major lost opportunity. This is very real data. It's a UK retail study. We looked at how people engage with the narratives of leading grocery retailers within the UK, and this was really interesting because what we found and what we often see is that all 3 of these retailers are doing a lot of great stuff in terms of both climate and societal impacts, the local food bank, lots and lots of good stuff they're doing. However, one of these retailers is seen as authentic in the way it's communicating that by consumers in the UK, by shoppers in the UK, whereas 2 of them are seen as, in spite of the stories they're telling and in spite of the authenticity of those stories, are just not seen as being as authentic. And it's really quite interesting. In UK grocery market's about 225 billion pounds at the moment turnover. What you can see here is with these big retailers, the financial impacts are really very significant in terms of what this is doing to shopper preference and choice. And I just wanted to finish on that because I think what hopefully, and apologies for the confusion around the slides, what hopefully comes across here is that we measure the way in which individuals engage with businesses and brands, public and private sector, that are doing the right things and how they communicate those. And there's a couple of levels of level that's important. One is doing the right thing, creating the business case for doing the right thing. But the other is then arming businesses with tools and the measurement techniques that allow them to understand how doing the right thing actually translates into preference and choice and behavioral change and value creation. That's the link that we work very hard to create because we're passionate about social value. We think it's an extraordinarily strong concept. It's the right way to think about these things, but it can only really be built into business cases if you can measure, and that's what we do. And the final comment I'd make before I hand back over to Gabriela is, in this world where there is, in some markets at least, and it flows around the world, more skepticism, should we say, about businesses and brands doing the right thing around diversity and environment and all these things. Actually, even business leaders in some of the most skeptical markets in the world still want to do the right thing. What's so important for us is to be able to arm them with quantification, with the business case behind doing the right thing, because actually, doing the right thing can translate into value. It's the right thing to do, and it gives the right commercial outcomes.
Thanks so much, Lawrence. And again, apologies for the slides mishap, but we will circulate that so that everyone can see. And then in the Q&A, if we want to look into any of the data that Lawrence has talked about in a bit more detail, we can get into that as well. But thank you, Lawrence. You've made a really, really good points around why it's so important to businesses outside of what we traditionally see in the UK landscape, which is really focused around meeting procurement requirements by the public sector. I will share some slides in a sec. Perfect. So if Lawrence is talking about then the kind of business case for why should we be doing good through our business? Why should we care about our communities to begin with, outside of some of the legal requirements that we may have as organizations? I'm just going to talk a little bit around why is social value a really good language to be able to bring this to life, and how can it make what you're doing more robust to then push your agendas forward. So we'll just go to the next slide and the one after that. So social value as a language is more of a unifier. So I'm not going to describe what social value means. I'm not going to define it for you, because obviously if you're here, it means that you either already know what social value is, or you're learning about it through the different sessions. But what I do want to bring to light is just the contrast between, in a world full of different reporting frameworks and languages and requirements. We talk about CSR, ESG, et cetera, social impact. What is the difference, and how does social value fit into that from the perspective of how we talk about the good things that our businesses are doing? So CSR, it was a term that came up many, many years ago, and was really kind of seen as, what are the good things that businesses are doing? However, that's often cases was kind of seen as something that was additional, whether it was volunteering or donating to charity, but it often wasn't seen as something that was core to business or connected to business activities. That's when we then saw ESG start to emerge, and where we see a lot of global reporting requirements come in as well. And ESG is different from CSR in that we're looking really to minimize a lot of negative externalities of our businesses. So for example, looking at carbon emissions, looking at human rights violations in our supply chain. And so a lot of it is about minimizing that negative, managing risk, but then, which is really important, but it doesn't look as much at the added value creation. And one thing that ESG and social value have in common is that it is something that, through reporting requirements and different frameworks that we have available to us, it is something that we are able to measure over time and be able to track progress, set baselines, and ultimately understand, what are we doing well? What could we be doing better? How do we compare to other organizations? Are we seeing significant change and improvement over time? And that's something that both ESG and social value have in common as languages that we use to talk about what businesses are doing and how we're impacting our communities and the environment. Social value, though, takes it that next step, and it looks at value creation beyond what is business as usual. So it does look at business activities, but it's looking at positive value to society in the form of more concrete and immediate outcomes. And then we're not going to get too much into social impact. There was a session yesterday on value versus impact that I would encourage you guys to listen to if you haven't had the chance. So we're not going to get into a ton of definitions, but ultimately social value does help us in setting that baseline of understanding of what's going on, and is able to then help us talk about the wider impact, societal impact that we're having in our communities. Next slide, please. Again, won't talk about this too much, but really, I just want to drive home the point that social value as a language is something that can really help us to unlock more information about what we're doing and how well we're doing it. So it's a language that is a currency for conducting responsible, sustainable business. So it's something that is quantifiable, and in many cases, something that we can monetize as well. But ultimately, what it helps us do is look at those group level or global level initiatives and strategies, but then also look at the hyper-local needs of our communities. So if we have a global strategy, then we can look at specific countries or specific local areas, understand what the levels of deprivation are, and use the same language to connect all the dots across the board to be able to look at it from both of those perspectives. So it really gives us a language that is consistent and detailed and quantifiable. Next slide, please. We're seeing that it's growing more and more, just the amount of social value that's being reported on. So therefore, social value as a language for talking about what we're doing as businesses. This is just a snapshot of what's been captured on the Social Value Portals platform in the UK over the last several years. So we're seeing a 3,000% increase in annual social value reported since 2017. We're also seeing significant growth since 2020, nearly 20 billion pounds of social value reported only in 2024 through the social value portal platform. So it's not to mention any of the other social value that's being reported. And again, this is just in the UK. So we've had over 56 billion pounds reported in the social value portals platform over the last several years. So obviously that translates to real outcomes, real lives that are being impacted through business activities. And that's something that's only going to continue to grow and grow, not just in the UK, but on a global scale. Next slide. And we'll just spend a second on this one. I've talked a lot about quantification. You will hear a lot of talk about quantification across the different panels in this conference, but this is just to say that the quantitative part, while it's a really important part of the story and it's something that can help us get to the next level, it's only one part. You're not going to be able to understand isolated data points without context. And so we need that qualitative element to help to tell the story. So this is not an argument to say only look at quantification. It's something that has to go hand in hand with that qualitative storytelling element of what you're doing. Next slide, and this is the last one. And this is something that Chris will be able to bring to life a little bit more in talking about his personal experiences with his company. But ultimately, I saw a question in the chat actually, so way to get ahead of it. But how do we actually bring this to life? So the first thing is to recognize, as Lawrence is really talking about, that social value and kind of delivering impact as an organization is a competitive imperative. It's something that is not a phase, it's not a trend, it's going to keep growing, and requirements and expectations from stakeholders are only going to get more stringent. Then we need to look at not just minimizing the negative externalities and not just looking at compliance from a reporting requirement perspective, but then also looking to create meaningful value in the communities that we're serving, making sure that we're localizing and personalizing the social value that we're delivering to different communities. Where we don't have capabilities, looking at building partnerships so we can target those different areas of social value that we want to deliver. Be really transparent when measuring and reporting, and this is something that we can definitely talk quite a bit more about, but that's how you're going to gain trust, and something that Lawrence was talking about quite a bit as well. And then finally, avoid social washing. So it goes back to the point about being transparent. I will leave it at that just for the sake of time and pass on to Chris to talk a little bit about his experience with serious tissues. And we can stop sharing screen as well.
If only I'd seen that diagram at the start of us launching 2 brands. It's very handy. So I suppose the interesting thing. So I've been involved in launching Change Please, which is a coffee business that trains homeless people as baristas. It's 10 years old in about 2 weeks, and it's been an absolute roller coaster. I think so much of the things that both Lawrence and Gabriela have spoken about ring hugely true. Initially we identified that the social impact we can make could be a real competitive advantage, both in terms of Change Please and with serious tissues. I think the ability to localize that impact. Initially, Change Please started with a real focus on London, increasingly became something that could work in big corporates. So we started off with a handful of coffee carts around Covent Garden, London Bridge, and then where we started to have some real impact was actually getting companies like Virgin Atlantic, David Lloyd, UBS, huge amounts of different elements of government and NHS. There's a Change Please in Downing Street, for instance. Making that impact at a business level where you've got, instead of changing what one person is spending their money on, you're changing what a whole company is spending their money on. The impact you can make is huge. So being able to talk about it in terms of scale, in terms of volume, has been huge. In the ability to localize it, the ability to have partnerships. So more recently, so Change Please started with those coffee carts, very much about helping people who are experiencing homelessness, but not your hardcore rough sleepers, because they're probably a little bit further from the workforce. But Change Please then worked to create these basically converted. So Jamal, who I'm sure a lot of you have met, is a absolute force of nature, the Change Please CEO. During COVID, he bought, I think, 3 London buses, and we were all like, what the hell are you doing? And he's just gone, look, we're going to convert these into mobile service centres that go around London and deliver services to people that are properly, rough sleeping. They had showers, they had washing machines, the ability to help set up a bank account, get a haircut, and also speak to doctors and dentists. There's a crazy fact that I think 1 in 2 homeless people have tried to remove their own teeth, which is fucking insane, right? And apologies for swearing. That fact always like kind of gets my back right up. But we partnered with Colgate to have a bus that was wrapped in Colgate branding. You may well have seen the Colgate and Change Please TV ad that was on for a while. And that was really made a big difference. And I suppose it made total sense for them, because Colgate, there's only so many adverts you can make that are talking about your latest whitening toothpaste, whereas the effect of dental hygiene on someone who's been experiencing poor dental hygiene is really powerful. So that was really interesting. And all those partnerships that have come from working with different big companies. Change Please is now available in Nespresso machines. So Nespresso give £1 million each year to Change Please to help with training across the country. Opened a training centre in Ireland, and we get revenue from those sales, which is incredible. And then, I suppose the kind of next point really around that is where Change Please was having real success. We were thinking to ourselves, okay, what else is an easy switch that people can make, that companies can make, that they buy a lot of? And Jamal in particular was spending a lot of time in offices, looking at what big companies buy a lot of. And obviously they're buying a lot of coffee. They're also buying an incredible amount of toilet roll at the same time, and tissues and things like that. So Jude, I've just got a question from Jude about the value of the partnership. Do you mean in terms of the kind of cost that Colgate paid, or the kind of forward value of that partnership? Because I think I can probably, I'm not sure how much of that I can answer in terms of actual numbers. The value Colgate got from, probably the simplest way of looking at it is the cost of wrapping a bus in London, just like a weekly bus wrap, is about 20 grand. So that's just to wrap one double-decker bus for a week. They paid a bit more than that to wrap it for an entire year, and it was constantly doing the rounds around London. So that, as a media buy, solely as a media buy, had an unbelievable value from it, because they had a bus constantly on the road, right, in London. And that was the same with MasterCard, with HSBC. David Lloyd are the new partner for this year. So the media value alone is unbelievable. And then I think the amount of money they spent on the TV ad would suggest that they were getting really positive metrics from when it was out in the world. I imagine it's a lot more salient and distinctive than seeing an ad that's just like some shiny white teeth and a dentist talking about it. So both those things, the amount they invested suggested it was working. So there's a lot of value there, I think. So I suppose so Serious Tissues was a slightly different model. So we, between myself, Jamal, and the other 2 founders who've launched it, we've got, well, at the time we had 8 children, now we've got 9. We really wanted to do something which had an environmental impact, which was tackling climate change, tackling deforestation. So Serious Tissues was set up to look at the problem in the category. And actually, interestingly, it's probably worth touching a little bit on kind of pulling it away from my own experience a bit. The book I've just written, Obsolete, which is all about brands that are changing the world for the better, whether that's social value, whether that's health, whether that's environmental. And there was a really common thread I saw with every brand. So I spoke to brands like Tony's Chocolonely, Oatly, Wild, Fussy, Surrey toothbrushes, Exo bikes that have got a brilliant model that's stopping reoffending, probably 30 or 40 different brands that have got really interesting different business models. The one thing that came through really clearly with each of these brands is there's almost a bit of a formula that they build themselves on. So the first thing is there is a problem people care about. So you find something that people genuinely give a shit about, whether that's sustainability, their health, homelessness, reoffending, slavery in the chocolate supply chain, whatever that might be. You then find a problem in the category, so something in that category that is not optimal. So in the case of toilet roll, for instance, the vast majority of toilet roll used in the UK and around the developed world is made from virgin pulp, which is basically a tree that's grown for 30 years and is then cut down to make toilet roll, which seems like absolute insanity at a time where we need trees more than ever to fight climate change, capture carbon, do their job, right? Turning something that's grown for 30 odd years into the ultimate single-use product is madness, right? So you've got a problem people care about in climate change, deforestation, a problem in the category in that everything's made of trees, effectively, when you've got, so our product is recycled, it's UK made, it's plastic free. Bamboo is a good alternative, but it's shipped 20,000 kilometers from China, and it's really expensive when you compare it to recycled options. And recycled has come a long way since the 30 odd years ago, when we might have had recycled toilet paper at school, and the less said about that, the better. So you've got your problem, you've got your category problem, and then you've got a proven impact on that problem, right? So what is the business doing that is genuinely making an impact? And I think it's the word impact, I think, is really important. Both Lawrence and Gabriela have talked about it. There's been so much said about brand purpose, and it's just words most of the time. It's brands attaching their beliefs. They're just talking about something. They're not necessarily making a genuine impact about that. And as long as you are making an impact, in the case of Change Please, it's about training people experiencing homelessness as baristas, helping with onward employment. In the case of Serious Tissues, the impact we're making with the change of product is already big, but we also plant trees with every sale. It differs depending on exactly where we're selling it, but we planted around 1.7 million trees since we've launched, just over 4 years ago. We have a dashboard that shows where our tree planting happens as well, because I think transparency and social washing and all that kind of thing comes up all the time, and particularly in tree planting, right? People are going, are you really planting the trees? Where are you planting them? What kind of trees? All those kind of questions. So our dashboard allows you to see the amount of trees planted, what that, how the calculations transfer into carbon captured, into the amount of hectares of land that's covered. It then allows you to see a global map, and you can see where in the world we've planted. It gives you information about mangroves or whichever type of reforestation that's happening. And then you can actually go in and see GPS trails of the tree planters, of where they're planting each day. There's photography from the field. Like, it's about as radical transparency as possible when it comes to our tree planting efforts. And then I suppose the most recent development is we're bringing and it really rings true with what Lawrence was saying earlier about localizing your social impact, localizing that impact. So we Serious has grown pretty well. Change Please, I think, was a simpler sell because it's UK based, very easy to switch coffee, slightly harder to switch toilet roll because of dispensers and long contracts. But also the impact would happen in London or in Manchester, where these people are. What we're doing now is we're bringing the Change Please model into the cleaning sector. So basically, you would, because being a barista is quite an intense job. If you've gone from a fairly unsettled lifestyle, and you're suddenly standing there with a queue of commuters at 7:15 in the morning, everyone wanting a different coffee, everyone being picky, people are impatient. It's pretty scary. I wouldn't like to do it, right? It's full on existence. Whereas a role as a cleaner still has its challenges, but it's a lot more in your own bubble, routine. The hours can be really flexible. So we're bringing that social impact model from Change Please that's tried and tested, and we're bringing it into the cleaning sector. We're partnering with some big 3 big facilities management companies and Bunzl, who are basically a huge a huge distributor, sort of Amazon for business, effectively. They sell everything under the sun. So we're really excited about that model. And it really takes we've had 10 years of learnings from Change Please and from Serious, and bringing the social and the environmental together, being able to really localize it. When it comes to, it feels to me like there's so much money that particularly in the Social Value Act is earmarked for having that push against social value in terms of the assessment, particularly in government. Switching something like, I don't know, defense or tech from government spend is really bloody hard, right? There's so many different suppliers, and it's hard to get social value. Switching toilet roll, switching coffee, surely that's the easiest thing in the world to shift, because no one really is going to notice too much. And the impact it can make just by changing how people wipe their bums is kind of crazy, really. So surely it's the lowest hanging of fruit to switch. And I think there's lots we've learned in those 10 years that pulls it all together. But anyway, I'll stop sort of just talking, and maybe we can have a chat.
Thanks so much, Chris. And you guys are really setting an example for what it means to make impact and social value core to your business from beginning to end, through your supply chains, through your partnerships, through to your company culture, but then all the way, obviously, you're part of your senior leadership team. So it's really evident that it's being led from the top just as much as it's being influenced from the bottom as well. Just to start, we have maybe about 10 or so minutes for questions. I have one to start for the both of you, but from different perspectives. So kind of in thinking about this session really being to support people in making the business case for impact and social value internally. Chris, obviously you're a senior member of your organization and have quite a bit of influence over the decisions that are made. And then Lawrence, you've worked with a lot of different brands and have influenced from kind of more of a consultative expert perspective. Do you have any advice for people that aren't in those significant positions of influence in how they can influence their senior leaders or the rest of their organization to start taking these steps to make value and impact and community engagement core to their business? Where do you even start having those conversations, and how do you have those conversations? Maybe Lawrence, we'll start with you. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
I'm on mute. Sorry. I think pointing to examples is really powerful, where you can see, in different categories in different markets around the world, where brands have been able to tell that authentic story and how that has translated into positive commercial outcomes. So I think it starts with directionally, where might this business case go, and eventually, and ideally, it gets to the point where that business, that brand, decides to measure. Maybe it's in a category they operate in one very specific market. It could be in one specific city, but actually measure how is your narrative landing? Is it seen as authentic? How are your peers and competitors' narratives landing? Are they seen as authentic? And what is that translating into for them? Because when you reach into the mind of the individuals who you want to influence, then their minds are influenced by all the different inputs from you, from your peers, from everybody operating in that market, in your category, in other categories. So as soon as you start to look at that, you automatically get benchmarks and comparisons. You see what's working, what's not working. So I think start with examples. Ideally, and it's not very complicated to do. Measure. It can be done.
Thank you.
I'd agree. I think case studies are such a powerful device, right? Being able to say, there's this brand, this brand, this brand. I think we did loads of research with Kantar, which looked at a cohort of brands, and it looked at something called Brand Z, which looks at all the brands in the world. And we had our cohort of change brands and average brands, and change brands are almost twice as differentiated. They're more likely to grow faster. They're more likely to grow in the next 12 months. They're more likely to be important in the future. So it's not just a nice thing to do, it's good brand and business strategy. And there are huge amounts of success stories, a lot I talk about in the book, that have just really carved a trail. And then you're seeing lots more smaller brands starting to emerge that are kind of going, we can do a Tony's in our category, we can do a Wild in this category. And I think having those trailblazers and those examples to point to are really strong.
Great, thank you guys. I'm seeing a question from Laura Giddings in the Q&A chat. It says, no brand can create social value on its own. How important are partnerships with others, like suppliers, local communities, or even competitors, in making a real difference?
Yeah, I think it's one thing we've seen with Change Please is the partnership side has been enormous. So whether that's Virgin, whether that's David Lloyd, whether that's Colgate or HSBC, Nespresso, you're working with these monster brands that have huge footprints. So being able to partner, it works really well for both sides because it gives them something interesting to talk about that's not just flogging their product, and it works amazingly for the brands because for the smaller brands because it kind of gives you a platform to tell your story. So partnerships are huge, and to Lawrence's point, measuring that impact and communicating it's really powerful. Every quarter for a Change Please client, they'll get quarterly emails about people they've helped off the streets, particular personal stories about people that have had their life turned around by that partnership. Similarly with Sirius, we can create a specific dashboard for a university, a big office. We work with Jones Lang LaSalle, for instance, Mighty. They've got their own dashboard that means this is the mighty forest we've created by partnering. So it's almost having the partnership and then telling the story of that. So everyone internally feels proud of it and wants to keep it going. I think Change Please have lost one account in 10 years because they're so brilliant at communicating the power of the partnership.
Yeah, can I just add to that? Because I completely agree with what Chris is saying. And I think the more directly relevant those partnerships are to the cause of the business, the more powerful they are. I love the Colgate example because, I mean, Chris, as you were talking about the dental health problems of the homeless, actually there is such a powerful narrative around that that's relevant to Colgate's brand. I can just see that landing extremely well with
100%. Yeah, relevance. And
yeah.
Just sellotaping your brand to something isn't a good way to go. It needs to fit.
Yeah.
Thanks both. Just one last question before we run out of time, and this one I'll direct to you, Lawrence, but Chris, if you want to add in, feel free to as well. So once, we talked a little bit about how do we make the case internally to senior leaders, how can we kind of exert some influence if we're in a more junior position, but then kind of looking maybe abroad as well, beyond the UK, in situations where, we're in a climate where purpose-led comms are at odds with politics in some markets. How do we navigate that, or how do we encourage people to overcome some of those challenges when we're told, well, actually, if we do this, we're going to get into trouble, or there's a lot of pushback from different areas, even though we know that some of these things are the right things to do. And Lawrence, to your point, we see the data is backing up consumer behavior.
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, I very much hope that we are in a temporary period when the trends that we see are as they are. I do think the best defense is quantification. Yeah. In the meantime, most business leaders want to do the right thing in reality, in my experience. And if they can be put in a position where they can defend doing the right thing with their shareholders and other stakeholders because they can demonstrate that the commercial outcomes are favorable, then that can create the headroom, the space to do the right thing, because these things can't be turned on and off overnight. Yeah, these are long-term commitments as organizations to the right infrastructure, the right energy, the right employment conditions, all these things. You can't turn it on and off. One little story I did like, which is just an example, but in the context of what's happening in the US, all of the big four firms announced they were rolling back their D&I programs. I was delighted that within hours of that, the managing partner and chief executive of Deloitte in Europe, said, we are not. We believe this is fundamentally the basis for our whole value proposition to our clients. We absolutely remain committed to this. I'm quite sure that when the administration moves on in the US, that the rest of the Deloitte firm will rejoin the belief of Deloitte Global.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd love to kind of close on is there's this the thought at the heart of Change Please and Serious, and a lot of what's in the book is this idea of if you move the money, you change the world, right? You change how people and businesses spend their money, you can make an impact. You don't need to move every single bit of consumer spend. You only need to move a couple of percent. So consumer spend is about between 60 and 70% of GDP in every economy. Globally, that's basically, if you move 1%, it's 700 billion every year moving to brands that are making an impact. 1% of consumer spend, right? So it doesn't mean you need to buy a different brand every single time. You just need to have it happen more often than not. And when you see brands that are growing and making a success of themselves, that have impact baked in, they become that success story, and it becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. So that thought of money is incredibly powerful, and no matter where you sit on the political spectrum, you give a shit about money, because the man sitting in the White House is probably the main thing he cares about, right? So as you see him feathering his nest all around the world with various things that probably shouldn't talk about, he's probably watching. But I think if you can focus on that shift of consumer spend, shift of business spend to something that makes genuine impact, you can do that under the radar. That doesn't have to happen. No one has to shout from the rooftops about it. It can just be a slow, gradual thing. And then if the two things are aligned, and the businesses that are growing, the businesses that are raising investment are also the ones that are making the biggest impact, then happy days, right?
Yep.
Thank you both so much, Chris and Lawrence, and thank you everyone who's listening in today. Hopefully we've given you some good talking points to take back to your senior stakeholders, your teams, your partners. And so best of luck with being the social value champions in your circles, and we will see you guys all again soon.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks so much.